Road in Pennsylvania, I've been everywhere, man. I've been everywhere, man. I crossed
one of the sitcoms that we watched back then. To be honest,
I mean, I was born in '72. You don't need to date yourself, but so I saw it like in reruns and syndication.
Yes, no, I saw it. I didn't see reruns.
Okay, all right. Well played.
Welcome to Barnstorming PA.
Welcome to Barnstorming PA. We have more important things to talk about.
Yes, than daytime television on TV land. So my name is Taylor Lightman, and it's always a pleasure to be here on Barnstorming PA. We're a podcast about politics and culture in Pennsylvania. Jordy and I are both from Central PA, Lewisburg and Union County. So a lot of our politics kind of circles around rural PA, but we're not exclusively about that. And today we have a special guest that's actually running as a statewide candidate. So we're happy to do this. And like I said, my name is Taylor. I used to be in politics. Now I do neighborhood revitalization. And as always, you know him, you love him. My co-host, Jordy Dumas.
Yes, thank you. The professional hat rack with many roles. So happy to be here. Thrilled to have our guests who you'll hear from in just a moment. Something that Judge Dumas may not know, I am on local governance, so I care a lot about Commonwealth Court and different, how government works. But also I was one of the 18 petitioners in the Legal Women Voters VPA case that won and that changed the congressional districts. So I'm one of the two people who I enjoyed being deposed, right? Because our attorney said, this is the deposition.
That sounds raunchy.
Yeah, right. She said, this is the deposition. And I said, are they paying for this? She said, yes. I said, is there any limit on how much I can talk? She said, no. And so he was like, so why do you care about democracy? And, I said, well, it started when I was 17, I read Montesquieu and I went on for like several hours. It was like Friday afternoon. This lawyer was just like, oh, this guy, shut up. So that is a niche story. Funny. Yeah, I don't share that story a lot because it's kind of a niche audience. But.
Okay. So welcome to the show, Judge Dumas. It's a pleasure to have you on.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I am from Philadelphia, and I have been on the bench for now almost 20 years. I have sat in every major trial division here in Philadelphia, which gives me a lot of stories to tell about all of the different types of cases that I have had the privilege of hearing. I was very young when I took the bench. I had only been in practice for maybe 11 years and decided that I really wanted to make a difference from a level that I thought could really impact the things that I was seeing in the courts that I didn't like. I didn't like, some of the quote justice that was handed down to some of the people that I was representing, because I came back from law school and actually opened up a neighborhood practice where I served my neighbors, family members, their family members, just people who, were a part of the neighborhood who couldn't afford, an expensive attorney. And so I learned how to be a lawyer by actually taking cases that I didn't get paid a lot for, but I worked very hard, to help them to resolve their issues. And
was that like wills to tenant disputes,
yes,
to filing business paperwork,
it was anything,
one-stop shopping?
Yep, criminal. I did some bankruptcy. I did, contracts, personal injury. So was it whatever walked in the door? I figured it out. And I will say that early on, I had mentors that were judges that actually helped me out, who later became colleagues, which was really, really neat. And so they would, give me court-appointed cases when I would come in the room because they knew that, I was hustling, I was learning. And so it was great. And it was probably that experience that really led to this journey to the bench. Because I didn't go to law school to be a judge. I went to law school to be a lawyer, but it was, of course, as I said, the experiences that made me want to do more. Yes.
And Philly, I love visiting Philly. I've never lived there. I understand it's really a city of neighborhoods, right? So do you need to, we do have something like, do you want to tell us a little bit more? Like, were you practicing in the neighborhood you were from?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I went home. I went right back to the neighborhood that I was from. So, I was like the hometown girl that made everyone proud. So I had people from elementary school that had legal issues by that time, and so it was a thing of pride for myself, for my mom, of course, because I grew up with a single mom who was proud. She was my biggest cheerleader, and then for her to be able to say, "Oh, just call Lori. She can do it. She can handle it. She'll go to court with you." So yes, hometown. I was from Mount Airy and West Oak Lane. And, my practice, my law practice was first started in Mount Airy, my first one. And then the second one was in Germantown. No, actually Mount Airy, but sort of Germantown Avenue, which was still Mount Airy, but close enough to Germantown. Some people still call it Germantown, but, so yeah. And, I didn't actually, move downtown until I hooked up with some other attorneys who have been practicing for a while. And what I did was I always kept the satellite office in the neighborhood, although it's a downtown office. So yeah.
How does your background inform or how does it inform your judicial philosophy, like when you're on the bench?
Well, I think that coming from humble beginnings, never forgetting from where I came, and being grateful for the blessings that I have, received, even just to be a lawyer. People that I grew up with, a lot of them didn't even go to college, let alone, law school. So, I take the spirit of humility to the court, treating everyone with fairness, and I don't like injustice at all. And so when I see it, it really disturbs me. And so I am conscious about ensuring that what I'm giving back is respect, equality, justice. And those are not just buzzwords. But I believe that judges are, we are public servants. We are not, gods that sit high and look low. And we have an obligation to the people that we serve. And they should be, when they leave your courtroom, they should not only feel that justice has been served, whichever way that falls, but that they have been treated with respect and dignity, and they should understand what happened. And so, it's all of that kind of goes into, who Judge Dumas is in the courtroom, but also who Judge Dumas is out of the courtroom as well.
I want to follow up with something which is half comment, half question, but I find the judicial elections, I think it's good that we elect judges, but I also find the restrictions around them. I understand them, but I also find it produces a weird kind of campaign.
Yeah, and we should just go ahead and say the restrictions.
Oh yeah, go ahead, Taylor.
You are not allowed in campaigning. You're not allowed to take specific positions on issues or make promises.
Right.
Essentially,
no promises.
Right.
Judges are not politicians. So
right.
No.
Which of course, makes sense because you don't want any sort of appearance of that promises made on the campaign trail affect what happens in the courtroom later. That also means, weirdly, you're not allowed to directly ask for money. However, we're allowed to ask for money on your behalf. So please visit Judge Dumas's website because it's not free to run. And we all know that you have to pay for all kinds of ads and things. So what I was starting to say was, to me, the people who run for judge, especially like yourself and Judge McLaughlin and Judge Spurgeon, people we've had a chance to talk to. And in the past, we interviewed Amanda Green Hawkins, who I think very highly of, who's a labor attorney. I mean, you're some of the best and brightest, right? And then you're reduced to this kind of odd, this is me speaking, not Judge Dumas, this odd kind of beauty contest of who has the nicest life story, right? It's kind of weird because we're asking you to weigh in on some of the hardest problems with the most thoughtful, educated people. So all of that is set up to say that you said something here, and I want to set you up to maybe say more about it, which is the relationship between, we have an ideal that the law is universal. And then we also,
justice is blind.
And that justice is blind. And I think we also have an understanding that every person comes to a courtroom from a different place and every case is different. And the law is not a rule book, right? So another judge in this race, Judge Compton, has on his official webpage says, I am a judge who doesn't interpret the law. Sorry, I don't make the law. I just follow it or I just enforce it. That kind of a thing. So I just wonder if you want to say more about that tension, right? And I'll just say that, like, I find his comment really insulting as a voter, because, again, if the law were so clear and perfect, we wouldn't need judges.
Yeah, exactly.
You're right. And I think you've hit it right on the head that there is a lot of gray area in many laws. And the interpretation of those laws, are made by people, judges, right? Mm-hmm. And the interpretation is rooted in something, right? It's rooted in who you are as a person. And so to try to make the public believe that judges are robots, and we look at words and we look at facts and we merge them, and then the same decision comes out of those facts and those rules of law, is not being totally honest, because it's not. We're human, and what we bring to every decision is who we are. And though we're not supposed to be to rely on any outside influences, no biases, you still are who you are. You bring yourself to the bench. And so that is what people need to research and to learn, who judges are, what's inside, what's at their core. Sometimes they can figure that out from the types of community service, that the judges participate in, their backgrounds, how were they raised, what kind of jobs they had before they took the bench. And so all of that goes into the decisions, because, as I said, the law is not, it's just not ironclad. It isn't. We want to believe that the laws, especially our Constitution, was written in a clear way where we can all understand, but you can see how the laws have changed throughout the years. It depends on who's sitting in the seat, right? And so voters have got to first and foremost know who they are, what they believe, what they value, and then they have to select judges not for popularity, not who's the cutest or who has the best looking outfits or who actually, can deliver the best speech. It's really about, if I were in front of this judge with one of the most important issues in my life, would I trust her? Would I trust him to make a decision that is equitable, fair, just, and right? And that depends on who that judge is underneath that robe.
And I also think, I wonder if you would this, those are not synonyms. Equitable, fair, just, and right. They're not synonyms, because exactly the grayness is where you have to make judgment, right, about a certain set of facts or a law and what it means. Taylor, I don't want to mess up our rhythm, but it seems like this is a great place to ask her specifically about the Commonwealth Court.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we should.
So going from Court of, did I get the right term, Court of Common Pleas, to Commonwealth Court, like what do you see as some of the big changes, and what draws you to that level of the law, which is, as a layperson, I understand it.
And also, I guess, first and foremost, like what the Court of the Commonwealth is. Commonwealth Court.
The Commonwealth Court.
Yeah.
So actually, the Commonwealth Court is the only court of its kind in the whole United States. It was a court that was carved out of Dauphin County's court system, and there are special cases that actually are heard just in Commonwealth Court. And cases that anything regulated by the government, those appeals go to the Commonwealth Court. So if you think about just about anything in our lives, really, because what isn't regulated by the government, right? So you have banking, insurance, environmental cases, zoning,
election law,
elections, of course, school funding, those meat and potato issues that really impact how we live, right? How our households run, utilities, and so those things that are regulated by the government, this court is supposed to ensure that the government doesn't overpower the voice of the people. And along the special, I guess the specialness about this court I really enjoy is because since I've been a trial court judge for almost 20 years, this court is a hybrid. So you get to hear appeals, but you also get to hear cases of original jurisdiction, which means I get to hear trials as well. And so it feeds both, or it scratches both itches, right? So I can be an appellate court judge, but I can also still be a trial court judge and use those skills that I've honed over the last 20 years in some very important cases. Elections being one, this is the court where, last year there were a lot of cases filed in Commonwealth Court as it related to our election. And some important decisions came out of this particular court as it related to elections. And even now, as we are sitting here, there are some cases pending that are still election related as it relates to Philadelphia's electoral system. So this court, I believe, and not just because I'm running for it, is really, I think, is the most important court in Pennsylvania. Now, why this court as opposed to some other court? I sit in civil court now. So the cases that go to the Commonwealth Court are civil cases. So all of my experience from the Common Pleas Court in the different areas of law, they all they may, in one way or another, to the Commonwealth Court in a civil case. So I'm hearing zoning cases now, zoning appeals. Those cases, if appeal from Common Pleas Court, will go to the Commonwealth Court. There are other cases. There are agency appeals. So if someone appeals a zoning board decision, and I'm hearing that, and then that decision is appealed, that then goes to the Commonwealth Court. So a lot of cases actually are fed to both, honestly, on the appellate level, to either the Superior Court or to the Commonwealth Court.
So for example, let's say that company that wants to build a pipeline to move natural gas across PA got a zoning. I'm not going to ask you to rule on it, but there was a zoning decision that went against them, and they didn't like it.
Right.
They
would appeal to you.
They might end up in front of you after an initial,
right?
Or maybe
even
it was original jurisdiction.
Yes.
In Pennsylvania.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes.
Or let's say that there is an agency tasked with protecting the well-being of youth, and then they find that there's a police department that is maybe not doing enough to make sure that juveniles that comes into contact with are not themselves victims of trafficking. Right. So you have one government agency saying to another government agency, you're not doing enough. Is that the kind of thing that would come before your court?
Yes.
Do you want to talk more about trafficking?
That's my passion.
Well, that was not a random example.
Yeah. So I consider myself to be not an expert in trafficking, because I think that when you call yourself an expert, that means you have nothing more to learn, which is not true. I think that every day I learn more about trafficking and the ills of trafficking. And I had the unique pleasure while I was in family court, because I spent 15 years there, to start the only human trafficking court for juveniles, and exclusively for juveniles in the United States. And I did this in addition to my regular list. So it was a ministry in my church. I learned, about what trafficking was outside of the States, and then how it actually was a domestic issue with trafficking victims living right and being young people trafficked right in Philadelphia and in Pennsylvania. And so I took that, I guess that yearning to learn more, became, educated, took all kinds of trainings to understand what I needed to know so that I could make a difference from the court. And that's what we did. I created a dream team of professionals that were interested, in really making an impact. So kids that were already in our system that were being commercially and sexually exploited, and created a system around them to help them to heal from the inside out. And I'm proud of that. I'm proud that Pennsylvania has now, it started in Philadelphia, in our court system, but it has expanded all over the Commonwealth, jurisdictions wanting to do better. And Pennsylvania, is now touted as one of those jurisdictions where not only do we have the most, we're number 4 in the reporting of victims, but also we have been recognized for our, as a whole, a jurisdiction as doing what we need to do to make sure that our children are protected.
And is this something that you can continue? Like, how do you think that work that you've done in the past can then inform your work on the Commonwealth Court? So,
because especially with the trafficking victims, I had an opportunity to work with a lot of stakeholders, DHS, the federal, the FBI, Salvation Army, with some of our non-governmental organizations as well, the school district, the DA's office. So a lot of those stakeholders actually, I know where the holes are, right? So I know how they operate. I know what works, what doesn't work as it relates to issues that can come before the court. In those cases, those types of cases, or those stakeholders have cases that are heard in the Commonwealth Court as well. And so, for me, it's a good thing, I believe, to really understand, what goes on in these agencies, how they work, what their systems are like. And so when I get a case, it's not cold, right? I know exactly, how things are, supposed to operate in order to do what that agency is supposed to do for the people that they serve. And when there is an issue or when there is something that has to be resolved from the court, it's better to have a judge that has an idea about what he or she is looking at as opposed to not. And whereas it's totally different if I get an environmental case, I will have to learn from scratch, but as it relates to issues with the school district and DHS and, prisons, because we get some of the parole appeals as well, because I've done criminal work. So it's having a full understanding of the subject matters that really helps judges do better on this level.
Just could I do one more question,
Yeah,
Taylor?
yeah, please.
So I'm interested in well, first, it's something just to kind of lift up, and I no way mean to say that things I deal with at the borough level are comparable in terms of scope or impact, but there is this maybe similar quality, which is, anybody who's a public servant, whether it's an elected official like myself or you're elected also, but I'm technically in the legislative borough council. Anyway, I have to make decisions about things about which I'm not an expert all the time, right? Mm-hmm. Be it roads or sidewalks or the applicability of the ADA or budgeting. And so, very quickly you realize that a big part of what you have to do is understand the expertise being given to you. And are you asking the right questions? So yes. I think that probably, that actually sets up my question, which is, I know a little bit about how the U.S. Supreme Court works, like in the room, but when you're on the Commonwealth Court, is it the kind of thing where you are able to ask questions of the attorneys who are arguing the case?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And that's something that I do now. And okay. When I'm in front of a jury and I do explain, to the jury that if I ask questions, it's not to, kind of give you any idea of how I feel about the case, but it is asking questions so that things I believe need to be further clarified for the jury or for myself. And then, of course, if I don't have a jury, I ask questions as well, because some things just aren't clear. And some things I do need to understand better in order to make a better decision.
Right. And it seems to me that's so important because I'm sorry, I'm geeking out a little bit, but like language and law are so intertwined. So, in the case of human trafficking, something that wasn't well defined as an issue, when you're the person who's bringing that, right, when you have people, and I don't know a lot about it, but in the domestic situation, I think a lot of times people didn't realize, they didn't literally have the words, or they didn't know the right questions to ask to surface that somebody who maybe seems like it's a shoplifting case, I'm making this up, tell me if I'm right, or some other truancy or some other crime, that the underlying issue is this social need. Okay.
Yeah, I will tell you about my trafficking experience, and when I trained other judges, and we would go through scenarios and things that seemed one way on the surface. When we dug deep and through those trainings, at the very end of most of them, judges they felt guilty because they knew they had cases and they didn't know what it was. they didn't know. And so I'm like, no, we're not going to do that. It's not about guilt. It's about now that you know, you do better. Right.
Yeah.
But it is like that. I mean, it's really amazing. If a judge really prepares himself or herself for, the different areas of law, through, of course, being on the bench first, I would say, I think it's tremendous for a judge to be a judge before you go to the appellate court. I just think that is necessary. But I realize that it's not always the case. But I think that those are the judges that are more prepared to be able to be good appellate court judges. But like you said, knowing what to ask, knowing the language, and for me, even coming from juvenile court is it's a whole world in itself. Everything is an acronym. And, if you walk in there and you don't know it, you feel like you're in Babylon. You have no idea what is going on. And that's the way that the attorneys are talking to each other. That's the way that the attorneys are talking to the judges. And so when those cases, come in, those juvenile cases, to the Commonwealth Court for, issues that would have to do, of course, with regulations of the government, it's good to have someone there that understands what the heck really happened at the lower level. Right? Because for the appeals, we are looking at what happened at the lower level and deciding if, in fact, there were any errors. Well, if you don't really understand the underlying subject matter, I don't know how you really can judge if what was done was correct or not.
Yeah, I want to move on to your opponents. And I know that you are not allowed to say anything negative about your opponents, but I'm just curious, how are your opponents positioning themselves, and how do you think you are different from them? Like, what makes you the most uniquely qualified?
Because if we didn't say this, we should have. Every voter gets to vote for 2, and there's 4 on the ballot.
Yeah.
Yes,
that's right.
Yes, there are 2 open spots, and yes, so voters to vote for 2. I would say that my experience as a trial court judge is what makes me very different from both of my opponents. One is a lawyer, has never been a judge.
That's Drew Compton, right?
No, that's Stacey Wallace.
Oh, Stacey Wallace.
Right now, Drew.
I guess he's been a judge for a little while.
Right. So he was appointed 2 years ago. So he now, he does have 2 years of judicial experience. But, as I said, I've been on the bench for it'll be 20 years in February, have had the opportunity to listen to and preside over many different types of cases. And I think that's probably what makes me the different candidate, as it relates to those 2 in particular. I don't know how they're positioning themselves. And I will tell you, because it's almost like we're running just the Democrats and the Republicans are just running 2 separate, lines that we don't really run into each other. We've met each other maybe at one event where we were all together, where we actually,
was that the Modern Courts?
Oh, actually, no. Well, that was on Zoom, but we actually physically were in Crawford County, and we did a judicial forum at the for the Crawford County Bar Association. That was the first.
Isn't Crawford County lucky to get all of you all?
No, yes. I mean, it was very pleasant. I enjoyed hearing everyone, and their spiel, because it's putting a face with the name, just like the voters, right? Have to put a face with the name. And, of course, we all kind of heard about each other, and then finally we're in the same room. So, listen, I just want what's best for Pennsylvania. I really do. And, the voters have to decide if experience matters. This also is a court where, it doesn't look like Pennsylvania. I mean, as a whole, and there are no people of color on this court. And, that should matter. And I'm not saying that I should be elected to this court because I am a Black woman. I'm not saying that at all. But I bring a perspective that's missing, and coupled with my experience, both life and on the bench. So, you really get the total package by voting for me.
Yeah. Judge Nichols, is she on Superior Court?
Yes. She's the only other woman of color in the whole appellate court system in Pennsylvania.
Right. Which is, I think, I counted. I think that's 484 judges, the whole appellate system. It's a lot.
How many?
I said 484. I'm joking. It's
I was like, wait a minute.
10 Commonwealth, 7 Superior.
No, 9 Commonwealth.
Okay.
9 Commonwealth. Right. So there are 31.
31.
There are 31, actually. Yep. 31.
So, if we...
So it really doesn't look like Pennsylvania.
No,
it should be roughly a quarter people of color, I think. I can't remember exactly all of PA. Between a quarter to a third.
Yeah.
So we have 2 more questions and then the game.
Okay.
And maybe we'll skip the other question because I know we want to be careful with your time.
Okay.
Yeah, are we actually doing you a favor pulling you away from the Eagles, or sacrifice? You don't have to answer.
I like
tricky politics.
The Eagles. No, I'm
like,
fine.
are you watching the Eagles, or are you supporting your husband? Maybe I should.
No, I like the Eagles. I do. I'm really a basketball girl, but I've learned to like football because he likes football. And so I watched it, and we've had a lot of young athletes from our church that have elevated through college and now are playing, in the NFL. That's exciting. And then I have some of my peers who were friends whose kids, are the same way. Like everyone's kids are now growing up and they're playing.
You're saying you had peers who were professional athletes, and I was like, I'd like to know about that. Appellate court justice who's a linebacker for the Steelers, whatever.
I wish.
That'd be pretty cool.
Yeah, I wish. No.
What was the question? I totally distracted you.
So what do you view as the most consequential U.S. Supreme Court case in our history?
God, there are many.
And can we just say that, like, we asked this because obviously the Commonwealth Court is different, but we want to get at judicial sort of approach or philosophy, which seems like it should be in bounds. So that's a little bit of the thinking behind it.
It's kind of just a,
and I know this is going to sound cliche-ish. I don't know, but my passion is really children. It really is. And the minds of young people, so, Brown versus Board of Education is, for me, it's what being a judge really should be, right? We're talking about equality. We're talking about, putting everything else aside and what is right and what is best for young minds, right? That we are shaping and developing to be able to take over the world, right? And so, even in the Commonwealth Court where, these education, these funding cases go and the huge funding. I mean, granted, we're talking about funding again, now in the Commonwealth Court, but, when Judge Doris Smith was there, there was a 40-year-old case. They had been fighting over this desegregation case for 40 years. And even in her tenure, she worked on this case for 15 years before it got resolved. Like, that's crazy. It's crazy. And I had no idea. And praying that the decisions that, that we will hear, that I will hear when I'm there, and even our Supreme Court, that the decisions, those types of decisions don't take generations to resolve. Because in the meantime, guess what? We have generations of children that are being impacted, which means we have generations of adults that are being impacted by inequities, right? And it's just not right. It's not right.
It's also, I mean, you can't go wrong with that one in a way, but like, I was just thinking, if I remember the case right, it was when did Marshall argue it, or was he on the court? But I think he argued it, maybe Thurgood Marshall, but he was saying that, there was this thing that was ostensibly legal. You could have separate but equal school systems, if memory serves. And then the U.S. Supreme Court said no, right? And so going back to some of our themes about language, facts,
overturned Plessy versus Ferguson, right?
I don't know.
Right? I didn't hear. I'm sorry, I didn't.
Overturned Plessy versus Ferguson. He said.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
But the separate but equal, right? I mean, that's an example of the kind of thing. I mean, laws can be written that are unjust.
Yes.
Right. Yes. And we see this. I mean, right now, I'll just say I beat my head against the wall. There's a local call-in show, and I'm constantly calling in and saying that there is no, there is these election laws that you're talking about are a burden because there is no voter fraud, right? On the surface saying, what's the problem with requiring an ID? And I'm like, yeah, on the surface, it's fine, but you're not looking at the impact, right?
Right.
And so you're
Right.
proposing a remedy for a problem that does not exist.
That has an extremely devastating impact on election integrity.
I also
Sure.
won't mention that if I asked them to sign up on a database to register their guns, they would flip out. So it's like database for this, not for that. Like
And you know what? And that's where, if people could see outside of themselves, like when we begin to chip away at democracy, it impacts all of us, right? And there goes one freedom and one right, and then there's something on the other side. Because the law has this, the law of balance. What happens on one side happens on the other, and we have to be very careful, about how we, chip away at freedoms, because that's a slippery slope. It really, really is, and it's not one that I want to go down. I think that yes, we need checks and balances. Yes, we need to do things in decency and in order, but we have to take people first into consideration, and that's what we're getting away from. And it's and everybody doesn't feel the same way. The world needs to be balanced. Things need to make sense all the way around. I get it. That takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of work, but it also takes compassion, and it takes intentionality about not being selfish, which I just think, unfortunately, we're leaning more towards day by day.
I think that's a good place to leave it. So we're going to play this game called Judge This, which is sort of, it's a little bizarre, but it helps people, I don't know. So
it's a lighthearted attempt to humanize the conversation, and the world is grim. So our approach is we got to laugh sometimes.
So
the feeling that you agree with that.
So here's the case, Judge. A week ago or so, I went to dinner at Jordy's house with my parents.
He's way off script, by the way.
And and at the dinner was Jordy, his wife, and his mother-in-law. And I was driving. I had to do something in State College, and I was, I assumed that, and you should know that Jordy's Mediterranean. So
my father's an immigrant from Spain.
They wanted us to come over at 6. And so I was camping and I hadn't heard this. And so I was going to be an hour late, basically. And so we were already an hour late. We showed up at 7, had a fantastic time, drank several bottles of wine, and then we stayed over two bottles of wine. And then we stayed until 11. And my parents thought that was way too late, and they were really embarrassed. So who do you think, do you think we should apologize to Jordy and his family for for coming late and staying late? Or do you think that this is okay and we shouldn't just worry about it and let bygones be bygones and know we all had a good time? What is your take?
Well, I definitely think that being late that's the first time that you should have made an apology. When you were late getting there. And then as far as staying late, I think that it is room for another apology. We were having so much fun. We apologize. We didn't keep you up so late. We know you have things to do in the morning. And so, yes, I think that there should have been an apology made on the front end and on
apologies.
The back. Yes.
Okay.
I'm going to say, I think there were at least 14, which almost got to so many that I was like, please stop. And just because it's funny, literally my father, who is an immigrant from Barcelona, Spain, sat me down when I was like 15. And he said, and he in many ways anglicized, but he said, if you show up on time, it is rude.
If you show up on time, what?
It is rude. Like showing up on time is rude. So that was like the value system for.
So you should be fashionably late.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. That is for all of our Spanish family to show up. If we say dinner is at, usually there's at 9 or 10 at night. If we show up at 9, that's rude. You do not show up at 9.
Okay.
So, but that excuses him if he shows up late at our house.
Yeah.
Yes,
but it doesn't really.
But that's because that's his culture. So yes, that's his culture.
Yeah.
And if we wanted you to go, we would have said so.
Do you have
you would say it's time to go?
Do you have like some
politely, but
mallet or hammer that you can Consider this rule.
She doesn't carry a gavel around with her.
A
No,
gavel?
I don't. You know what though? I'll use my cell phone. Boom.
Okay. All right.
So one of my mentors told me and not in this case, but normally judges use their gavels when things are out of control. But what he said to me, the late great A. Frank Reynolds told me, if you ever have to use your gavel, you've already lost control. So I've never used my gavel.
That's a good, wow.
Yeah.
That seems like it expands, that has implications beyond the firm. Are we also doing
I want to hear the TV. I want to hear the 2 TV shows.
Okay. All right.
And then we'll just skip everything else. Because I don't want to recycle any questions basically, but I am very,
I thought the whole point was to have the same questions for all of the candidates. Oh my goodness.
I don't know.
Okay. Sorry, Lori, this is what we call artisanal podcasting.
Yeah. We're just,
that's okay.
So for our crime shows here,
Okay.
are you a Better Call Saul or Law and Order?
Probably Law and Order.
Okay. Classic.
Okay. Since the knives are out, do you know Better Call Saul? Have you heard of it?
I don't. See, but you didn't know that, did you? But I know Law and Order, so I'm like, okay, but I don't know.
Because it's been on forever.
Like
we had an argument about.
We had an argument about this.
Okay.
Because it is highly reviewed, but it's a bit niche.
Oh.
It's on Netflix. It's basically like the prequel to Breaking Bad.
Okay, can I be honest with you?
You don't like crime shows?
I don't watch a lot of TV at all. So
that's probably why you're so successful.
Okay, well, can we? How about movies? Can we do this one?
Okay.
Star Wars?
That came out wrong.
Okay.
that's not the only reason why you're successful. But
right. So, Star Wars or Star Trek?
I'm gonna be honest, I don't really
Neither
care for Galactica type movies. But if I had to choose, I would probably say Star Trek or Star Wars. Probably Star Trek. It would be Star Trek. If I had to select.
It was the first interracial kiss on network television.
Was it really?
Yeah. Captain Kirk and was it the Uhuru, the communications person? I know it is. I can't remember.
Their characters were really they became household names. Like they were real characters, right?
Wasn't Whoopi Goldberg on Star Trek?
What?
No.
Taylor, we're talking about the 1960s show. I mean, maybe she was like
Whoopi Goldberg was totally on.
Okay, she was on one of the 7 spin-offs. This is a lot of fun, but I think that Tomas and I were imagining William Shatner, Leonard Nimoy, with the ears.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Yeah.
Uhuru.
Whatever. It's not my start. It's not my start.
All right. Can we do one of the food ones?
Okay. Yeah.
Well, this one, do you know what a Pittsburgh salad is? You may not. This is sort of a Philly.
Oh, no. I've heard about Pittsburgh salad. So yes.
Okay. So do you think that the Pittsburgh salad should be embraced by all of the Commonwealth?
They should be where? Everywhere?
In other words, it shouldn't be just the Pittsburgh salad. Like we should eat Philly cheesesteaks in every corner of the Commonwealth. Should we also eat the Pittsburgh salad?
No, I agree because listen, you eat what you want, right? And so, but I think what happens is when you replicate something that's from a particular place, they never quite do it right. So
interesting.
That's the only thing.
I feel like there's
my salad.
I feel like you're throwing down for cheese.
So are you a Pat's or Geno's?
Am I what?
Pat's or Geno's?
Oh, Pat's or Geno's. Well, actually, from the Northwest, we had Pagano's. So we didn't even, because when you're up there, and lots of times, like you say, neighborhoods really kind of, you're in your neighborhood, so I didn't know about Pat's and Geno's until I was, old enough to be able to travel, down to South Philly. And my mom was really strict and tough. So I couldn't really do much of anything until I turned 18. So I didn't even know about Pat's and Geno's until way later. So, we had Pagano's uptown.
And what goes on the Pagano's?
Pagano's. Their main thing was, first of all, their cheesesteaks were like huge. They had so much meat. It was just ridiculous. But Cheese Whiz. They use Cheese Whiz instead of regular cheese on their cheesesteaks.
I mean, I'm not going to, I'm a sometime chef. People should eat whatever they want. I was going to say, when I make my own cheesesteaks, I mean, cheese whiz is kind of weird. I put
Jordy
real
puts Swiss cheese. Yeah,
No, I
Jordy
do not put
No,
Swiss
you
cheese.
don't.
I put provolone. Usually I put provolone and
yeah.
cheddar.
Yeah.
But I do not put Swiss cheese. That the
Oh no, not
most
on
famous
cheese.
presidential gaffe ever when John Kerry asked for his Swiss
with
cheese.
Swiss cheese.
All right.
Have you ever heard of Altoona pizza?
Yeah, this is one we discovered today.
Altoona
And you-
pizza.
It's a Southwest thing. It sounds weird.
Yeah.
What's
it's-
on it? What's on it?
It's like a thick crust pizza. I've only read about it. With
Okay.
a tomato sauce, and then it'll have typically
Just like those squares of cheese.
a square of American cheese, but underneath that is salami and green pepper. So the salami and green pepper is okay. The American cheese, I'm a little bit like, maybe that's good. I don't know if you should call that pizza.
That's not
But
pizza. No,
American
that's a
cheese.
sandwich.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's
no.
it's a flatbread.
It's an
American
open faced
cheese.
sandwich.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah.
But
Yeah.
they call it. Listen, they call it pizza in Southwest PA. I've been to Philly much more, so I don't know.
Well, I don't want to be disrespectful to
No,
Altoona.
I love
There too.
I love the diversity of food. I would try it.
Yes.
I would just gently say, I'm not sure this is pizza.
Yeah. Okay.
Right.
Well,
Right.
Thank you so much.
This has been a fantastic. If people want to learn more about you, where should they go? What's your online presence like?
So they can go to the website at judgedumas2021.com. And of course, IG and Twitter is Judge Dumas or Judge Dumas 2021.
Beautiful.
And
yes.
your website is great. It's got a blog.
Thank you.
updates.
Yeah, your website,
Thank you.
the best one I've seen to see.
Oh,
Absolutely.
yay. Well, maybe it'll give me some votes, guys. What do you think?
Well, sure,
Well,
absolutely.
The website, you're going to get lots of votes from Barnstorming PA. We have a large audience, and
Oh, yay.
we'll direct them to the website. They'll
Yes,
know.
go to the website. I'm
and
really proud of the website.
in the show notes, we'll put
We'll definitely put the website.
Well, I hope we didn't keep you too much from your.
No, this was
Evening
great.
entertainment.
Thank you. Because I will tell you,
Thank you.
it's our days on the campaign trail, they're up and down, up and down.
Yeah.
And today was one of those days. So I enjoyed you
Tell you
guys. I enjoyed lightheartedness and the laughter. So thank you.
Well,
I
thank
have
you
a-
very much.
Thank you. We appreciate that. That could be maybe even our third or fourth review that we've ever. What are we on iTunes now? 12 reviews.
Something like that. I don't know.
We do. We
Nobody's
joke.
reviing these days. Everybody's just
nobody's
consuming.
We joke. We do get several hundred listens for most
That's
episodes.
awesome.
And mostly in Pennsylvania and central Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
Well, that's great.
It's an
This is-
audience
this
that
is-
doesn't get a lot of attention. So
This
we
is actually
really appreciate.
Yes,
you
we do
coming on.
appreciate it. This is a new rule that I'm rolling out here because I know that the Senate and the gubernatorial elections in 2022 matter, and I get slammed with emails from people saying this, and I'm like, do not talk to me about the 2022 election unless the first sentence is make sure you vote in 2021 and say something about that race. And,
Yeah.
and speaking of website, you have for people, I think you're the one about how to vote and registering to vote.
Yep.
And
Yes. Thank you.
and it's just-
And let me tell you, these seats are particularly important for 2022 and 2024 because any election cases where there are issues, and there will be, are going to end in the Commonwealth Court
Listen.
and maybe in the Supreme Court.
We call
I
these
enjoy-
opportunity years.
Opportunity
Yeah.
years. That's something we got from our friend Dwayne Heisler, and it hasn't taken off, but it will. Anytime somebody says off year, I metaphorically smack
no.
them like it's an
Yeah.
opportunity year.
We have to
It's-
change that language.
It's
Yeah.
also the grassroots and the top of the we've got
Grass tops.
the grass top. Well, it's the judicial elections and the local elections.
Yeah.
Yes.
And you're going to get cases about, oh my goodness, I call it this week I've been thinking about it as mask trench warfare in the school boards. I mean, it is, and I don't feel
I'm
like
excited though. I'm so excited to have the opportunity to really dig into these cases where I can impact not just one person or one family at a time, but my decisions will impact people that never even come in front of me. All Pennsylvanians at one time. That is tremendous, and I'm excited to just even have the opportunity to be there.
good answer.
Yeah.
We better
Well,
wrap
thank you so
up.
much. Yeah. It's been a
Thank you.
pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank
Have a
you
good
guys.
night.
Millview, Rockview, Waterloo, Lackawanna, Fairview, Bellevue, Sweet Root, Susquehanna, Lewisburg, Stroudsburg, Ellisburg, Orbisonia, Harrisburg, Pittsburgh, Wellersburg, Robsonia, Mountaintop, Glen Rock, Flat Rock, Sunbury, St. Mary, Chick.